We want to say welcome to Dr. Rick, who once again is blessing us with his presence. He is here with us as our chiropractor very generously a couple times a week, and we have been blessed with this presentation that he has put together and revamped and adapted, and will help us to grow in wellness. So thank you, Dr. Rick.
Thank you, Sister Kate. She's so great, isn't she? A little round of applause for Sister Kate. So welcome all that are here, and just to let you know that we are videotaping this today so that some of the sisters that don't live here at the convent are able to access this through the internet. So for those of you that are especially in the front row, the back of your heads will be on this video. So again, my name is Dr. Rick Hess. I'm a chiropractor from North Babylon and live in Babylon. I'm here 2 days a week for over 2 years now. I think I'm in my 3rd year. And it's great because each time I do one of these things, I see more familiar faces, and that always makes it a lot easier. The program that we're going to do, we're going to start this. It's actually 5 different sessions, but we're going to start with this one today. It's the very first. It's called Fit for the King is the name of the overall program. And the idea of that is that we are given God, we have God-given health. We're given health by God, and it's our responsibility to be the stewards of that health. And we're meant to be healthy people in whatever way that means for us at whatever point in our lives, whatever age we're at, okay? This first one is called Walking in Divine Health, and we're going to talk about that a little bit and give you some of the basic concepts then that we'll carry through. And then in subsequent sessions, we'll kind of walk through some of the different aspects of this particular session. So we'll clue you into that as we go along. But again, that's me, that's my office, those are my phone numbers if you ever need to get me, or you can always ask Sister Kate. She seems to always know where I am. This program, and I have to give him credit, Dr. John Madeira, who is not only a chiropractor, but I believe he's a minister of some sort, because, well, he's certainly a minister of some sort, but he may be a Protestant minister. But his ministry is to bring this concept of health and faith together, to bring those 2 concepts together, and help people to make better choices with their health because there's a faith issue involved, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So just to look at some of the scripture passages, some of the things that the Bible tells us about who we are as human beings of mind, body, and spirit. In Jeremiah, he knew you, called you, and set you apart before you were in your mother's womb. His plans for you are good. God has nothing but good planned for you, all right, including where your health is at. He chose a specific time and place for you to be born and impact the world for His glory. This is so powerful. Our lives are not haphazard. Our lives are not just, well, I happen to be here today. None of you just happen to be here right now and today. I mean, something is going to hit you today. There's going to be some message that you're meant to hear today, I hope. So, and as you pay attention, I hope it becomes clear to you what you're meant to hear. Every day of your life has been ordained and written a book before you were even born. That's a powerful one, right? Ephesians, God has already planned the good things you can accomplish with your skills, talents, and gifts. And this is important because where our health is at has a lot to do with what our abilities are and what we're able to accomplish. And at different points in our lives, we're able to accomplish less, we're able to accomplish more. And God uses us no matter where we are in our life, no matter where we are in our health. God uses us. He uses our skills and our talents and our gifts. So this is powerful. I pray that your body is as healthy as your soul is. You know, it's funny, when you start to tease some of these things out, you realize that there is a lot in the Bible about our health and our faith. And this is the big problem. My people perish from a lack of understanding. In that mind, body, and spirit, most of us as Christians have the spirit part down pretty good, especially in this room, okay? And we have the mind part down pretty good. It's the body part, you know, it's the physical, it's our health that maybe we don't always make the right choices. And so it's a lack of understanding. And so the whole idea of this program is to give you a better understanding of what the right choices are to be proper stewards of the health that God has given us. Sickness was never God's idea, right? No sickness in the Garden of Eden, right? There was no sickness there. Certainly no sickness in heaven. So sickness is not a God-given thing, all right? God wants nothing but good things. God wants us to be healthy, all right? And that's the whole idea of this. We're given a certain natural state of health, and it's our responsibility to be proper stewards of that. You know, it's very, very similar to the stewardship of time, talent, and treasure, all right? That whole stewardship concept that runs through the church now is that when you're given time, talent, and treasure, you're responsible to be the proper steward of that. And health is this, we want to kind of tack health into that concept, that if you have good health, you have to be the proper steward of that health, wherever you're at in the health continuum, and we'll talk about that later on. Anybody know where this flower is? Let's see who's observant. Right in the front. This is a flower that I spotted coming in maybe about 2 weeks ago. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's one of the drivers who cultivates this little garden over there. And he does just an absolutely beautiful job. But, you know, I threw it up here because, I mean, I used to have a rose in this spot, but because this is your flower, you know, I wanted you to see this and appreciate this. You know, when you think of how many people just walk past that flower every day and maybe don't even see it, but how beautiful it is, how intricate it is. This is a God-given gift. You know, God and His ability to design a flower, I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. I mean, it really is a beautiful gift. However, compared to the human being, which is the crown of creation, right? I mean, this is just an incredible thing. This is a baby. This is a fetus at about, I think it's about 7, 8 weeks old. So this is really at a very early stage. I mean, look at the fingers so perfectly formed already, and the lips and the eyes, the nose. I mean, this is already sucking on the thumb, right? That's the best thing. And of course, goes on to be born. Goes on to be a wonderful creature of God. I mean, compared to the flower, we're in a whole other realm here, okay? So that's who we are, that's who God has created us to be. He gives us this life, He gives us this health, and it's up to us to do the right things with it, all right, to make the right choices. We must be good stewards of the health God wants for us. That's the bottom line. So one of the goals of this program, one of the goals that I'd like you to kind of get into your head, and some of you are well on your way, make it your goal to live long and live well, okay? And to die healthy at a ripe old age. That's not a bad thing, right? That's not a contradiction in terms. Everyone is going to go. We all go on to God. I mean, that's a wonderful part of our faith. To die healthy at a ripe old age is not a contradiction in terms. But the important thing is to live long, to live well, and whatever that means for you at whatever point you're at in your life, to die healthy at a ripe old age. So that's the goal. That's what we're striving towards. I'm going to take a few minutes and just look at our healthcare system in the United States, because the question begs now, who's responsible for my health? Am I responsible for my health, or is the healthcare system? And of course, there's a lot of that in the news today. Obamacare kicks in as of, you know, October 1st. You know, we were able to buy into Obamacare. And I'm not going to get into that aspect, but you know, how does our healthcare system rank? Where are we in terms of the rest of the world? Well, there's two statistics that are used by the World Health Organization. That's what WHO stands for, World Health Organizations, to determine the level of health care by country. The two things they look at is infant mortality rate. That's how many children, out of every 1,000 children, live births, how many children die, and second life expectancy. So those are two big statistics that they look at, and they quantify or qualify the functioning and the ability of a healthcare system based on these two statistics. Many other things, but these are two big ones. So let's look, where do we rank in this? So now that becomes the question, how good is our healthcare system in relation to other healthcare systems in the world? What we find is that the US ranks 51st in infant mortality. That means that there's 50 countries besides us that do better than we do. The top 5 are Monaco, Japan, Bermuda, Singapore, and Sweden. All have lower infant mortality rates than we do, okay? And even South Korea, Hungary, and Cuba have lower rates than us. Okay, that's a little, right? Shocking, huh? The other statistic we looked at, life expectancy, and again we rank, at least we're consistent, right? Again we rank 51st. That means that there are 50 other countries besides us that where people live longer than we do, and that has something to do with the healthcare system. Here's the top 5, Monaco again, Macau, San Marino. These are all those little countries, right? A lot of no stress, I think. And Japan, of course, always tends to be in the top 5. Most industrialized countries are higher than we are ranked higher. So you know what, you look at that and you say, well, you know what, we must not be spending enough money on our health care. So let's look at what do the other countries spend, right? Australia, $3,600. Canada, $4,400. I just updated these. These are some of the latest figures as of yesterday, but these are figures for about 2012. Denmark, $4,400. Finland, $3,200. This is how much money is spent per person in these countries for health care. Do you follow that? You with me? All right, so the highest one here is probably Canada at $4,400, Denmark. The others are in the 3s and 4s. Where do you think the United States is at? $8,233 per person a year is spent on our health care. So what's the point of this? We're spending tons of money on our health care. It's not that we're sparing any dollar. We've got some of the greatest technology, but it's not doing the job that we need it to do from a preventive standpoint. Now, I want to be clear on this. This is not to say that our medical profession is not worth having, because thank God for the surgeons, thank God for acute care. They do a wonderful job with acute care. When you are broken down and there's a problem, they do a wonderful job. The problem comes with, are they able to maintain and prevent problems? And the statistics which would suggest that is not the case. So the idea is, now who is responsible? If it's not them, who's responsible? Well, obviously, it turns to us. And that's the whole point of this. Here's another graphic of the expenditure, the cost expenditure. Here's the United States all the way up here, and there's everybody else.
What's the OECD mean?
It's the ones who put the statistics together. It's an office. I knew somebody was going to ask me that. I should have committed it to memory. But it's an organization of countries, developed countries. Think of it as a UN. I'm not sure that it is the UN or a UN organization, but it's that. It's a group of countries that got together and evaluate some of this stuff as a group.
Just like that one, you notice in the United States, the public expenditure in comparison is much less in comparison to the private.
Right.
We're paying more.
Right. What Sister's pointing out is that the lighter blue at the top shows you what the private expenditure is. That's out-of-pocket expense per person. Whereas the darker blue is what the public expenditure. Well, I think the insurance companies are probably included in that. So that's what someone else's third-party payers. Yeah. Right. So when we look at what are the top 3 causes of death in the United States, heart disease, okay, is number 1. There's no surprise there. That includes, heart attacks and strokes. Cancer, which is the number 2. And somewhere in the early 2000s, adverse drug reactions actually took over 3rd place. Now this is not illegal drug reactions. This is pharmaceutical drug reactions, okay? Because there's just too much medication for too many things. And again, we'll talk further about that because I want to make sure we're clear on this. But as of about 2003, the use of prescription medication became the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States. All right? These are some powerful statistics. 80% of Americans, that's women and children and men, right? Adults and children, 80% of Americans take medications once a day, at least 1 medication a day. 50% take at least 2 a day, and 28% take 4 or more per day. But this is a powerful statistic. We Americans, men, women, and children, consume 65 to 75% of all the drugs manufactured in the world. 65 to 70% consumed by Americans. That means the other 35%, 25 to 35%, is everyone else. Now, what's the point of this? The point is it easier to take a high blood pressure medication than it is to get on a treadmill 3 times a day, 3 times a week for 30 minutes? It is, right? It's easy to take that pill. So we've kind of gotten into this mentality of going back into the 50s with polio, with the polio vaccine. Many of you remember that. Penicillin's discovery and these were miracle drugs. And for many years in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we really thought, we used to use the expression better life through chemistry. We thought there would be a pill for everything. And if you go into the 60s, that's where a lot of these pills came from. They were pills for happiness. If you needed to be happier, we have a pill for that. If you need to be sadder, we have a pill for that too. Well, what we realized is that all of these medications had side effects, and they weren't what we thought they were going to be. And sometime in the 70s and the 80s, people started to realize that, and the medical doctors started to realize that, and they started to back off of giving out all of these medications. But some of that mindset is still with us, you know. Well, I've got high blood pressure, what am I going to do about that, doctor? Well, lower your salt and take this pill. Okay, that's easy enough, I could do that. Okay, as opposed to, you know, lower the salt, eat better, get more rest, have a different mental attitude, and get exercise 3 times a week. Right? There's a lot more to that. Okay, so we're going to talk about all of that and about making those kind of choices. So your health is your single greatest asset. Without it, nothing else matters. But the point of the last 10 minutes is that this is your responsibility. The medical profession can just do so much. And they're so busy trying to take care of you when you do get sick that they don't always have the time to monitor you and make sure that you're doing all the right things the rest of the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is to become fit for the king. 1 Peter says, be well-balanced, vigilant, and cautious, for the devil roams around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Okay? The back part of that is pretty tough to handle, right? But the first part, be well-balanced, vigilant, and cautious. That's what that's about. It's about paying attention to what you're doing in life, paying attention to what you're eating, paying attention to your exercise levels, paying attention to where's my mental attitude today? How am I feeling towards the people around me? How am I feeling about myself? All of that comes into play in terms of our overall health. So we're back to this idea. So the rest of this talk and the rest of the series here is going to be about getting a better understanding of the 5 spokes of the wheel of health. 5 spokes of the wheel of health, I like this image because just like the spokes on the wheel of a bicycle or a wagon, if you can weaken one of the spokes and still get along, okay? But if you weaken 2 spokes or 3 spokes, or if you weaken one spoke so badly, what happens? The wheel breaks down and it no longer functions properly, okay? So these are the 5 spokes of the wheel of health that we need to keep tabs on, if you will, through our lives. We have to keep some consciousness about. The first is obvious, all right? Proper nutrition, right? Makes sense. We're going to talk. We're going to have a whole module just on proper nutrition. Proper exercise. We talked a little bit about that. Proper rest. Positive mental attitude, and a properly functioning nervous system. And why is that last one there? Because your nervous system controls every single thing that goes on in your body. 70 trillion cells in your body. Every single one of them is connected in some way to the nervous system. And each one of those cells does what it does because the nervous system controls it and allows it to do that. If that master system is not functioning properly, if that master system is not functioning without any kind of interference, then whatever those cells, whatever those nerves control is not going to function properly. Does that make sense? Yeah. We're going to talk more about that. There's that broken down wheel, right? Once those spokes start breaking down, once those spokes start weakening, then you wind up with the broken wheel. Which wheel would you rather be, right? This is a high-performance bicycle wheel. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about nutrition. Again, we're going to go into this in greater depth, but just to give you some ideas of some of the things we're going to talk about. The average American eats 62 pounds of beef, 60 pounds of chicken, 47 pounds of fish and shellfish, 197 pounds of flour and cereal, 4.7 pounds of butter on their bagel, 14 pounds of ice cream. That's a lot of ice cream. 14 pounds of ice cream each year. Okay, so that gives you some idea of where we're at nutritionally in the United States. Proper nutrition is not only what you eat, but it's also what you drink. And it's not only what you eat and drink, it's what you don't eat and don't drink that you're It's what you don't eat and don't drink that you're supposed to. Nutrition can sometimes seem complicated because, you know, that's what that cartoon says. For those of you that can't read it, it says, man is reading a newspaper. The headline says, new studies show all foods are bad for you. Because doesn't it feel like that sometimes? You know, you read the paper and you go, oh, one more thing I can't eat. Or you read the paper one week and it says, coffee is no good for you, don't you drink coffee. And then a month later there's another study that says, coffee is very good for you. They do the same thing with red wine, right? For years, alcohol was not good for you, don't drink wine. And now all of a sudden, red wine is something that, you know, is they say just a little bit of red wine is good for you, from a cardiac standpoint. So these are some of the things that we're going to look at again in the nutritional model, so I don't want to go too much into it. But just a quick way to remember this when you're making those choices. Now, some of the folks that are listening to this on DVD or through the internet, they do have the ability to go to the food store and make these choices. For those of you that are living here in the convent, your choices are made on the line, okay? When you're standing on the lunch line or the dinner line. That's your opportunity to make choices. Now, they do give you some healthy stuff down there. Question is, what do you go for? Okay, what do you choose? You also have, and many of you, one of the things they teach in Weight Watchers is you should use a buffet table like a menu. Not eat everything, not eat a little bit of everything, but pick the one thing that looks the best to you that day, to make the one right choice. So again, just a suggestion for those of you that are on the lunch line. But just to keep in mind that the 3 F's, fowl, fish, and fruit, these are the healthiest choices, fowl, fish, and fruit, and veggies, of course. Fruit and vegetables, and again, I'll talk a little bit about Weight Watchers because it's a program that I happen to be familiar with. But Weight Watchers, fruits and vegetables, they finally got wise to the fact that they're limitless. You can eat as much fruit and vegetables you want. Wonderful fiber, wonderful sugar, great vitamins. You're better off eating that and filling yourself up with those kind of things. So when you take that plate, fill the plate half with vegetables. And then the other quarter of something else and a quarter of whatever the meat on tray is. So just by changing proportions, just make little changes. We're going to talk about little changes. But just if you keep those 3 F's in mind, fowl, fish, and fruit tend to be the healthier things. The fish and the fowl tend to be lower in fat, okay? Chicken, turkey, and fish, all right, tend to be lower in fat. And again, the whole module will go into that. Just to spend a brief few minutes on exercise, 30 minutes is what's recommended, right? 3 to 4 times a week, 30 minutes of moderate exercise. Staying within your target heart rate, for those of you that are interested, we can go into that later on. But roughly, for those math majors out there, it's you take it's a number, 220. You take the 220 minus your age, and then that's your maximum heart rate that you should ever hit when you're exercising. I doubt anybody here is going to hit that, okay? 65 to 85% is where you should be when you exercise to stay in that aerobic stage, okay? And that's fine if you're out there jogging or bicycling or, whatever you're doing from the aerobic standpoint. But what's important to you is that last line, movement, right? Any kind of movement is good for you, any kind of movement. So if you can get up and walk, that's great. If you're confined to the chair, then do the movement to music. All right. Anything you do, any kind of movement is good for you. I have a patient in my office, a young man of about 86, I think he is now. But I've always said that I know when he's in the office because if I'm in another room, I hear him. I hear him walking. He never stops. While he's in that room, he takes the time to walk around my table. He'll stand next to the table, hold the table, and he'll do knee bends. He's always moving. He's probably in better shape than I am. He's in incredible shape. He's an ex-Navy guy, for those that know the Navy. But a wonderful man, and he attributes his health to the fact that he keeps moving. He just keeps moving. No matter what it is he can move, he moves it. Okay? Make sense? So encouragement for those that are either wheelchair bound or restricted in some way. Whatever you can do, however you can move, that's what you want to do. Yeah, as simple as that. Just listening to a story the other day about a man who sits on the side of a bed and he just does this 15 times on one side, 15 times on the other side. His legs go out 15 times one side, 15 times the other. Those are his calisthenics. He's 94. So he's doing something right, okay? Keep moving. That's the important thing with all exercise. Proper rest, we're going to talk a little bit about this because we don't have a separate module just on rest. The average weeknight daily sleep in 1910 was 10 hours. Okay, that's a lot of sleep. Now somebody said, well, in 1910 there wasn't a whole lot else to do. So once that sun went down, you might as well go to sleep. Yeah. In 1955, our average sleep time was down to 7.9 hours. Excuse me, and in 2010, we're down to 6.7 hours of sleep. For those of you that are a little older, you might realize too that as you get older, you seem to sleep less. One of the things I remember as a kid growing up, my grandmother, when she used to come and stay with us, always seemed to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. She went to bed with everybody else, but she was always up that much early. So as you get older, you don't quite get as much sleep or not as much sleep. But that's a big difference. What they recommend is between 7 and 8 hours. You should get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day. And a lot goes on while you're sleeping. Don't think that while you're sleeping your body shuts itself off. There's a lot of restoration that takes place. There's a lot of healing that takes place. A lot of regeneration takes place while you're asleep. Okay, so that's 7 to 8 hours is an important part of your 24-hour day. Okay? Regarding sleep equipment, that's your mattress, your pillow, and your box spring. Okay, that's your sleep equipment. Now, most of you here probably don't have a choice, although there is a choice going around, isn't there? I think there are some new mattresses coming in. But regular firm, I usually recommend to patients, you don't need extra firm, super duper firm. Just a regular firm mattress is usually sufficient. You know, you do have curves in your body, and you want a mattress that's going to support those curves, okay, and allow you to sleep. As far as the pillow goes, you want to try to keep your head in the neutral position while you're sleeping. That's not forward, not back, not to the left or not to the right. What does that mean? That means that if you're going to sleep on your back, one thin pillow. If you have too many pillows, you're doing this all night. If you don't have enough pillows, you're doing this all night. So you want to try to stay in neutral. And if you sleep on your side, well, now you got to fill the gap between the side of your head and the bed. If you don't have enough pillows, you're doing this all night, and if you have too many pillows, you're doing this. So you want to try to find neutral with your pillows. And pillows are a very personal thing. People will say, well, what about this pillow? What about that pillow? You really got to go and try them. And oddly enough, I was kind of shocked to find this recently. You actually can return pillows. I didn't know this. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this, but Bed Bath & Beyond. If you take home a pillow and you're not happy with it, you bring it back, they'll take it back. So these pillows are a good pillow could be $75. So you don't want a pillow that you go, oh, I'm miserable on this thing, but I'm sleeping on it because I don't want to return it. They will take them back. Personally, I'm not crazy about that idea. So we're going through the 5 spokes of the wheels of health. So we talked about proper nutrition, we talked about proper exercise, we talked about proper rest. This is proper mental attitude. We're not going to do too much on this because there's a whole module on this. The last module we do is all about your mental attitude. But just to say that your body puts out hormones that match whatever your mental attitudes are. And we've known that for years, that people who had a poor mental attitude, who had a bad mental attitude, tended to have body breakdown. They tended to have physical ramifications to that, right? And we've known that for years. What we learned shortly after that was that if you have a positive attitude, the opposite takes place. Your body now puts out very positive hormones, healing hormones, and can really make a big change in your overall health as well as how you feel mentally. Personally, I find it a lot harder to be angry at somebody, and I guess I came to maturity when I learned this, than it is to be nice to somebody. You know, that sometimes we carry these grudges around. It takes so much energy. I'm not going to talk to that person. I'm going to make sure I don't come into contact with that person. Well, it takes so much energy to do that it does as an adult to go up to somebody and say, look, we got off to a bad start. Can we do something, can we start over and start to make overtures, and all of a sudden that person comes around and all of a sudden you're getting along again. So proper mental attitude, very important to your overall health, but certainly to your mental health. Okay, make sense?
Yes.
In the last spoke of the wheel of health, we talked about properly functioning nervous system. As I said, 70 trillion cells all connected to the nervous system. The cell structure determines the function of the cell, but whether the cell functions and how the cell functions is determined by the nervous system. So I have cells that make up my stomach. They are stomach cells, let's call them, okay? Well, they do what they do for 2 reasons. One is they're designed to be stomach cells, right? They're not designed to be lung cells or heart cells. They're designed to be stomach cells. But if I cut the nerve going to my stomach, what are those cells going to do? They're just going to sit there. They're waiting for the signal. They're waiting for the information to come down from the brain to tell them what to do as stomach cells. I can irritate the nervous system in a certain way to make those stomach cells overproduce what they're supposed to do, okay? And from that we get an ulcer, okay, or dyspepsia, all right? I can irritate the nervous system in such a way that it produces less functioning of those stomach cells. When that happens, we get indigestion. So that's a very basic example of how the nervous system is supposed to function, and it can be irritated in such a way that it either causes increased activity of a cell or decreased activity of a cell, right? And that goes for every one of the 70 trillion cells in the body. Central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, and then coming out from that spinal cord are nerve roots. The nerve roots then form bigger nerves. Those bigger nerves form smaller nerves. Those smaller nerves form very tiny nerves, and they hook up to all of the 70 trillion cells. Now where does that irritation come in? And that's where I come in as a chiropractor. Where the irritation comes in, this is a normal motor unit. Each one of those white bones is in between there is a disc. You can see the disc in between the bones. I don't think this shows up on...
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, but it doesn't show up on the video screen. But if I can step over. Each one of these bones is connected by the disc joint up front and two other joints, one here and one on the other side that you can't see, okay? And it allows movement between those bones. That's what's supposed to happen. Those bones are supposed to be able to move and pivot in relation to one another. Sometimes if we overstretch or overstress an area, it causes those joints to lock, especially these smaller joints in the back here. They're called facet joints. And when those smaller joints lock, they become inflamed. And you can see that yellow nerve that's coming right in front of that. When that joint becomes inflamed, it irritates that nerve, okay? We call that a subluxation, okay? And that irritation to that nerve now causes that nerve to either become hyperactive or hypoactive. It becomes more active and sends more signal down the line, or doesn't send as much signal as it's supposed to. And again, just like the cable signal that comes into this building, if that cable is being interfered with in some way, you're either going to get a garbled picture or you're not going to get any picture at all, okay? So it affects what goes on down the line, how those 70 trillion cells, or the cells that are hooked up to this nerve, are affected. And as chiropractors, what we do is we look for that subluxation. So for those of you that come down to the office, that little poking and prodding that goes on while we're chatting is me trying to determine which one of the joints in your spine is not moving properly, and then just putting a little movement into it just to get it to move more properly again. The causes of subluxation, things that will cause that joint to lock up, I said any kind of stress or strain, but birth trauma, the original turning of the head and yanking is what we call the first subluxation. But any falls that the child has as they're learning to walk, then they get into sports and they start with the sports injuries, a little older, slip and falls. Stress is a big one. Again, we talked about positive mental attitude and how that affects. Car accidents, any kind of major trauma, all of these can cause that joint to lock up, which then irritates the nerve and then affects where that nerve connects to. So the bottom line is a healthier spine means a healthier you. If that spine is moving properly and is free of interference to the nervous system is going to function more effectively. And when the nervous system functions more effectively, your body and overall health is going to be better. Okay, make sense? And again, we're trying to be the proper stewards of our body. So what is it that we can do? Follow our nutrition. Follow our, improve our exercise levels, get more rest, have a better mental attitude, and make sure that we're clear of any kind of interference in our nervous system. We talked about some of this. This is important. This was a study that was done a few years ago. Just, one last thing on chiropractic, especially for this group. They took a group of elderly. These are not, kind of elderly people. These are elderly people. These are people in their 80s with all of the ramifications that you have. 414 of them, so it's not a small group. This is a fairly good-sized group from a research standpoint. So they looked at this group of 80-year-olds, 414 of them, and compared, they took them, obviously, as they usually do, and they split them into two groups. The one group had no chiropractic care, and the other group had chiropractic care. And then they followed them for a few years to see what was the difference in their health. And what they found was 87% of the chiropractic patients rated their health as good or excellent, compared to only 68% in the non-chiropractic group. 80-year-olds, 414 of them, 80-year-olds. 87% said they were doing good or excellent, only 68% of the non-chiropractic group. 13% of the chiropractic patients rated their health as fair or poor. 32% rated it as fair or poor in the non-chiropractic group. So as a group, the ones that were under chiropractic care felt they were doing much better, or they were doing less worse, if you will, than the others, all right? Interesting. But this is a big one. 44% of the chiropractic patients reported having arthritis compared to 66% in the non-chiropractic group. So it does make a difference. It really does. When they followed them 3 years later, this is important, when they followed them 3 years later, 5% of those who used chiropractic care were in a nursing home compared to 48% of the non-chiropractic group. So it actually kept elderly people out of nursing homes. I mean, these are powerful statistics. 26% of those who used chiropractic care were hospitalized compared with 48% of the non-chiropractic group. So what's the point of this? The point of this is that this happens to be chiropractic care. But the point of this is that if you take good care of your nervous system and make sure your nervous system functions properly, you'll have a better health. You'll have better health as you move forward through your life. So make it your lifelong goal to walk in divine health so that you never need a divine healing. What's that about? What this means is that better to stay healthy than to need to get healthy, all right? It's actually easier to maintain your health than it is to let your body break down. And you know what, we've learned this with cars. Anybody ever owned a car? Well, most of you have had access to cars, right? Well, we learned this with our cars years ago. You're much better off preventing problems, maintaining your car's well-being, if you will, from the time it's a young car, okay, until, rather than wait until the car breaks down and now you bring it in and you get whacked with big bills because you didn't maintain it properly. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, and just take a few minutes, I just want to present two big concepts that are going to carry through the rest of the talks. What is this idea of a health continuum, that we live in a health continuum, okay? And the best way for me to do that, I am going to move now. But over here, let's start with this side. I'll be your left, right? So here's the healthiest me I can possibly be, okay? I am exercising 3 times a week. I am eating all the right things, I am drinking all the right things, I'm not taking any toxins into my body, I have a great mental attitude. Spiritually, you know, I'm connected to God, and I'm enjoying that relationship. It's the best me I can possibly be, okay? Over here, here's the worst me I can be. I am eating Oreo cookies. I am drinking. I'm sitting on the couch smoking my cigarettes, watching football all day long, getting nothing done. I haven't been to Mass in God knows how long. Jesus who? Okay? The worst me I can possibly be. Now, where do we live? Right? We live somewhere between those two ideals, or if you want to call this an ideal. We live somewhere between these two models, okay? And we're never in one spot. Some days we're a little bit more this way, some days we're a little bit more this way. Some meals I'm a little bit more this way, some meals I'm a little bit more that way, okay? It's a continuum, okay, that is constantly changing, okay? But my goal should be to move towards who? Towards the better guy, okay? You like the better guy better, don't you? I do too. Okay, we all do, right? So we know we kind of know where we'd like to be, and we know where we should be. And the goal of this session, as well as the subsequent sessions, is to kind of give you ideas as to how you can move towards that better you. Does that make sense? Okay. The good thing about that is that no matter where you are, whether you're 6 years old, or 60 years old, or 99 years old, okay, no matter where you are, you can make changes that move you towards that better you. Right? At any point in our lives, there's something we can do. There's some choice that we can make that's going to move us away from that guy and more towards this guy, okay? Second concept that I want you to get is the idea that every step you take, no matter how big or small, makes a difference, okay? Now, sometimes I give this lecture, and I give the nutrition lecture, and people come away on fire. I mean, they're lit up. Oh, he's absolutely right. I love when they say that. He's absolutely right, and they go home and they open up their cupboards and they throw out all the garbage, and the next day they go and they buy bean sprouts and tofu and all the good stuff, right? And they just radically change their diet. That doesn't always happen, and that's a radical change. That's a very difficult change to maintain. It's a very difficult change to maintain, such a radical jump, such a radical step. But can you make a small change? And this, you know, when we do the nutrition thing, we'll talk about that. Can you, instead of having 3 or 4 sodas a day, can you have 1? That's a change. That's a very positive change, right? You've knocked down your soda intake 75% just with that one little change. Can you live with that? Can you live? You know, when I talk about the anti-inflammation diet, one of the things that is not recommended on the anti-inflammation diet is grain products. The big one is pasta. Now, I've given this to congregations that are largely an Italian congregation. You tell them they can't, you know, the pasta's on the no-no list. They get weak in the knees. I mean, they start crying in the audience. It's a sad thing to see. But if I say to them, look, I'm not telling you you can never have pasta again, but instead of having pasta 5 nights a week, can you have it once or twice a week? You know, those are so small changes, small changes. There's an analogy that I like to use. For those of you that were around in the 60s, I was a big fan of the whole space program. I thought that was just the coolest thing. Still is, right? But you know, the Mercury and the Gemini and the Apollo, oh my God, we put a man on the moon, right? Sometimes I talk to young groups and they're like, yeah, that's ancient history, but you will remember that, right? I was there. I watched the TV. I mean, I saw them. If I shoot that rocket from here to the moon, guess what? By the time it gets there, the moon's not there anymore, right? That moon's moving, all right? So what they did, they had to lead it, right? So they would lead, they actually shot where the moon wasn't. They shot where the moon was going to be in 3 days when they got out there, okay? Pretty cool, right? Well, if I'm here on this Earth and I take that rocket and I tip that rocket 1 degree, just the slightest little bit, and then I shoot it out there, well, it's in 20,000 or 200,000 miles. That rocket's going to be in a completely different place than if I left it where it was. Does that make sense? So what's the point of that? Small changes that you make now, very small changes, have very far-reaching effects. If you maintain that change can have a very far-reaching effect. So the patient that comes into me and says, you know what, doc, I've been smoking for 30 years, leave me alone. Well, you know what, how old are you? You're 50 years old. How long do you want to, do you want to live another 40 years, 50 years? Well, you're going to have a much better quality of life by quitting now at this point in your life. Even though you've smoked for 40 years. You know, you're going to make a change for the better, and in 30 or 40 years, you're going to be in a whole different place health-wise than you are now, okay? So, every one of us here it has the potential to make some change in our lives, to put us back on track with the good health that God meant for us, okay? And that's what this is all about. Yeah, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road broad that leads to destruction, and those who enter through it are many. How narrow the gate and constricted the road that leads to life, and those who find it are few, from Matthew, right? So what's this saying? Just what we were saying earlier, that yes, it's a whole lot easier to take that pill. It's a lot harder to get yourself into some sort of a regimen of exercise or to eat better. To make those kind of changes are harder to do. I'll grant you that. Cher, many years ago, used to have a commercial, you know, if exercise was easy, everybody would do it. And she's right? If it was so easy, everybody would do it. So when, is it Motion for Music? Is that the name of the program, or Music to Motion?
Yes, movement to music.
Okay, Movement to Music. Well, when that program comes around, is it easy to sit in the recliner and let the time go by? Or is it easy to go, or is it harder to go down there and actually go through it? It's probably harder to go down and get yourself down there, but it's important that you get yourself down there. It's important that you make those changes. Now, I always laugh when I say, you know, I'm talking to 80 and 90-year-olds, God bless you all. You obviously did something right. To get to this point in longevity, you've done something wonderfully right, you know, to be here at this point. I know we have 90-year-olds and 80-year-olds in the room, so, and that's a terrific thing, but doesn't mean that you can't still do better. You can't still move in that continuum towards that better you. In some way. And so hopefully over the course of the next 4 or 5 sessions, we're going to teach you some of that. We're going to walk you through this. We're going to teach you how to eat better. We'll teach you something about proper mental attitude. We'll teach you more about all the things that we talked about here today. So, okay? The rose window at St. Joseph's Church in Babylon. A little distorted because it's actually much rounder than that. But any questions?
There's a lot of subterfuge in packaging and telling you how many calories things are, and they sort of speak around. And most people don't look at the packaging and they don't know what it's saying and they haven't got a clue.
Right.
How do you,
Right. What Sister Pat is saying is that labels can be very deceptive. You read labels. We're going to teach you how to do that. Thank you. Thanks for the segue. In our next session, maybe 2 sessions, we haven't decided what order we're going to do this in, but within the next session or 2, when we do the whole session on nutrition, I'm going to show you a label and teach you how to read the label, because it can be very deceptive, okay? I'll give you just a quick example of that. Anybody ever know, does anybody know what a Twinkie is? Anybody? You do? Okay. Well, if you read the side of a Twinkie, it tells you what the calories are and what the nutritional destruction of a Twinkie is. Well, if you look more carefully, you realize that a Twinkie is 2 servings. Raise your hand if you've ever shared a pack of Twinkies with anybody. Right? What? We all eat both Twinkies, right? We all. Well, that means that now when you look at that label for the calories content and the fat content and the sugar content, you got to double everything. Same thing with these bottles of soda. You know, we used to go in, there's an interesting, I don't know if it's in any of the programs that I have, but there's an I know where it comes from, but there's an interesting thing to show Coca-Cola bottles. Now, again, for those of you that have been around 80 or 90 years, you know this stuff. How big were those bottles years ago? Right, they were this big. They were actually 7 ounces. You're pretty close. They were 7 ounces. Then they went to 9. Then they went to 12. Well, now you walk into the store and it's almost all 20-ounce bottles of soda. Well, when you read the packaging on it, it says that's supposed to be 2.5 servings. Well, nobody shares that big bottle. So, yes, you're absolutely right. There is, and it's not so much deception as it is playing a game with you, okay? They want you to be educated. They want you have to know to look at how many servings are in what you're about to consume, and to know that if it's anything more than 1 serving, you got to start multiplying, okay?
You know, like when you read the ingredients, you don't know what these things are. It's like gobbledygook. You know,
Well, we're going to talk about that too. We're going to go through. You're going to love it. We're going to go through all of that. Sister Pat said, you know, you read some of the ingredients, you don't even know what this stuff is. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. But so now you got to come back. Any other questions?
Very good.
Well, very good. Thank you for being here. Special thanks to the front row for being on video.
That's
And if anybody wants to come down and see me downstairs, you're always welcome to do that. There is a group that comes down on a regular basis. We have a lot of fun down there. But you can just see Sister Kate. Sister Kate will schedule you and get you and be happy to see any or all of you. Okay?
Thank you.
Very good.